So basically, I'm dealing with this Panasonic today. When we plug this thing in, it barely works. Basically, it's really quiet and fuzzy. And no matter what we do with it, change the channel, put in a tape, it just sounds bad. That is volume max. Even playing a tape, it's not much better. So now it's just a matter of taking this entire thing apart, and then it will learn why you should always work.
So let's get to fixing this and then ruining it with my visual Star Wars idea.
I assume the first thing I'm going to find in here is the speaker wires are loose. I think that's actually going to be it. But that'll be if I'm lucky.
So the inspiration for this is I wanted it to look like a radio that you'd see in a Rebel hangar. Just a basic mechanic shop radio that's been knocked over, covered in grease, cleaned up, put back together with spare parts. And one of the core details I wanted to add was that the handle be made out of a broken lightsaber. For all the details and greeblies, I'm using 16th inch styrene and some Weld-On 3 to weld the plastic to the body. The styrene adheres perfectly to the Panasonic body, and I'm confident that this radio has become incredibly difficult to restore. I wanted the speaker to look like it'd been kicked in a few times and somebody put a guard over it to stop that from happening. Made out of whatever junk fell off a ship. And you may think I should be locked up for ruining this $20 Panasonic, and to that, I say, maybe. I also say that only a Sith deals in absolutes, and it's gonna look awesome when it's done. Now, the entire back of the boombox is gonna stay stock, so it looks relatively clean and kinda has an air like it always came like this, where just the front decorative side is themed out, and the back just maintains its normal utility. Once I had all the details I wanted to add, I base coated the entire faceplate in an ashy gray, which looked kind of similar to the lighter spots on X-Wings. I mixed some flat red and orange together to get my baseline color for all the red details I'm going to be adding. And moving forward, I'm only going to be brush painting and using a lot of blending techniques that you'd commonly use on miniatures. I want to get a lot of detail into all these little parts so they look a little faded and worn. Every time I finish doing a complete coverage of the part I'm painting, I gradually mix in more and more white to lighten up the tone and paint closer towards the center, which makes various parts of it look like it's closer to the light source. I add gunmetal to the grill and I go back and add some gray paneling in various locations. And then I start mixing my lighter shades of red. I layer it lighter and lighter till it's almost pink. It seems extreme while the paint is still wet, but as it dries, it gradually blends together and creates different lighting effects. I repeat this process with lighter shades of gray for the gray paneling and switch back and forth while each layer dries. At this point, you might be impressed with how it seems like I can paint 10 times faster than any person normally would, but I have a confession, and that's that I sped this video up exactly 10 times. This entire process takes hours. Once the main colors were in, I decided to add these faux lights to various panels on the left side of the faceplate. And then I try my best at making them look lit up using only paint. After painting the lights, I move on to making some matte black panel line details, some fake rivets, and then move on to putting an ink wash in various locations. Once that's dry, I water down some acrylics and cover the entirety of the radio and then wipe it off to simulate oil, grime, abuse, dirt, and whatever else happened to this. Once the paint's done, I move on to making the lightsaber handle that I talked about earlier. The main body of the lightsaber I'm building out of a 12-inch sync tailpiece extension, because it was already shiny and it's almost exactly the same width as the stock handle. I wrap some vinyl electrical tape around the stock handle in order to make up the difference and place it inside the tailpiece, so that it stays centered. I use hot glue around both ends, and then move on to cutting and heat forming a piece of styrene for the blade emitter at the end. I'm honestly winging the entire shape of this styrene emitter, and just going for whatever looks good while I'm making it. Once it's done, I heat form it around the main body, and then screw in various parts and glue others to help it hold its shape. Then I use some tan adhesive bandage, more styrene, and various pieces of 4mm EVA foam to add detail. Again, just making it up as I go. Once I have a sufficient amount of detail, I mount it back on the box, paint the styrene details matte black, and then weather the entire thing. Once the exterior was done, I cleaned up the interior of the boombox. Luckily, the problem turned out to be only a cold solder joint on a speaker contact. I add some color for the selector display with some paint and vinyl, and after that it's time to put it back together.